Hello and a warm welcome to this week's edition of the Irish Angle, where we look back on all the things that happened in racing over the past 7 days or so. Of course, we had big racing last weekend, both in the UK and Ireland, and we'll go through all of that now in a few moments. I'd just like to first of all welcome Johnny Ward and Emma Nagle, who are with me this week to go through everything. Welcome, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Vinny.
Vincent.
Now, Emma, you were in Leopardstown Saturday. You enjoyed it, no doubt?
I was, yeah, no, it was a brilliant day's racing. I like to go to the Leopardstown fixture of Champions Weekend at least every year. I know I missed it last year, unfortunately, but yeah, great crowds. I think crowd figures up slightly on the year before. Just really good atmosphere around the place, top class racing. Great day for Ballydoyle, obviously, but Carl Burke had a double as well. Johnny Murta had a great start to Champions Weekend as well. So it was brilliant. Some really high class performances. Delacroix stole the show, but I suppose we'll go into that in a bit more detail later on.
Yeah, you talk about the crowd there. It was up 12% at Leopardstown, which is definitely a positive sign. 11,354 people turned up. The Curragh was down slightly, 5% down. Curragh's always been struggling here. They had 8,361, so just short of 20,000 over the 2 days. What do you make of that, Johnny, just on the crowd thing, first of all? Get it out of the way.
Yeah, I was at a League of Ireland game yesterday. I was working on the radio on Saturday, so unfortunately I couldn't go to either. And I've said this again, I don't really like giving out about crowds when I'm not there myself. And I suppose when I was in Ballinrobe on Friday night, that's a long day getting back at around 11 o'clock at night. Even though the nights are kind of obviously closing in a bit, so I suppose when you're a lot of people will probably relate to this when you're involved in racing in terms of working in the industry. You're not as inclined to go racing as much. And I also have to say, I haven't had a pint this year, so the concept of going racing and being there for 4 or 5 hours just kind of yapping without being in the bar is probably a different experience for me as well. So I don't go racing as much socially as I should, but I feel like I shouldn't be giving out about crowds. But the Leopardstown crowd wasn't bad. To be fair to the Curragh, the forecast was dreadful yesterday. It wasn't a nice day to go out, and the crowds were, I suppose, more or less what you'd expect. Leopardstown will have a new CEO. He or she has a massive job to get crowds back for the summer meetings. These aren't crowds to be getting anyway kind of excited about, but I suppose they're more or less in line with what we would have expected.
Yeah, that's interesting. You say you haven't had a drink all year. I was wondering what was wrong with you. Yeah, that sorts it out. The other thing here, Emma, just going across on crowds. Look, we get fantastic crowds for the jump racing here. And just for some reason, Irish people don't seem to have the graw for the flat. And it's very odd because worldwide, that Irish Champions Stakes Day in Leopardstown went to 150 different countries that was broadcast into. And they'd all be huge fans of the flat. Then you look at the UK as well, where jump racing is obviously massive. They're the two big countries for it, Ireland and the UK. But yet they get massive crowds for their flat racing as well. Even Doncaster Saturday for the St. Leger, 27,000 people turned up there, which is more than we had for both days combined for Irish Champions Festival. What's the reason for it? What are we doing wrong in Ireland that we're not getting the flat racing off the ground properly with the audience?
Look, I don't know. The tracks, in fairness, seem to be putting in a fair bit of effort to market. Like the Irish Champions Festival, I suppose, in particular, gets plenty of marketing, and they've tried plenty of different routes to market it to kind of all kinds of audiences, I suppose. And you're looking at Irish flat racing, it's as good as you get anywhere in the world. So if the racing isn't attracting people, I suppose there isn't a whole pile more. The card on Saturday was brilliant. I thought maybe a little bit disappointing having a small field for the 2-year-old race. In particular, having I think every runner was from the O'Brien family. But look, apart from that, it was top class racing. We saw international challengers. Look, I don't know. It's probably just a cultural thing in Ireland. People seem to have more of an affinity to the jumps racing. And is there a whole pile you can change about that? I'm not sure yet. You touched on Doncaster. I was surprised to see the crowds that they got for the Leger meeting, 30,000 going, near enough to 30,000 going to watch that. There was interesting, but I don't know, sometimes you feel with those big flat meetings in the UK as well, maybe they're being marketed more as a kind of a party day as well. They'll have big bands and DJs afterwards, and they're kind of attracting a party crowd, which, I think when you go to Leopardstown on Champions Day, there'll be plenty of people there for the social occasion, but it's a great racing crowd as well. It's not just people up there for a big session. It's obviously a good part of it to go up there and have a bit of crack with your friends and stuff, but it's a racing crowd. And look, I found the last couple of times I went to the DRF, it was nearly almost too busy. Like the facilities maybe weren't totally able to handle the crowds of 18, 19,000 or whatever. And it just felt like a lovely crowd on Saturday in Leopardstown, to be honest. Like you could go up and get a drink, you could go to the bathroom, get a bit of food, whatever you want to do, get around the race course, put on a bet, go to the ring, no bother. Very nice. I thought it was probably maybe optimal numbers to have in Leopardstown. Look, I know that they'll want to get more than that in the gate, for their own sake and to try and build the sport. But look, I was there and I couldn't complain about it. I know the Curragh figures weren't too encouraging, but I was chatting to a few people there. Like Johnny said, the weather was miserable, kind of put me off going now as well, to be honest. And I know it's probably a bit soft to say, but like with the wind and the rain was blowing down. But people were saying like inside in the stand in the Curragh there was a good atmosphere as well. So I won't be totally negative about it. It's kind of like Johnny said, as you expect now for these big flat meetings. They're kind of in line with the expectation crowd numbers, I suppose.
Yeah, and just another aspect of this, you mentioned it there about, the international runners, that there were 33 international runners over the 2 days at the Curragh and Leopardstown. And we had a runner from Japan, we had a runner from Australia, another one from Germany as well. Yet you go back to the Dublin Racing Festival, the jump meeting, 2 days at the start of February, only 4 British horses across the 2 days. Why is that, Johnny? What's going on there? How come we can attract the flat horses to come here, but we can't attract the jump horses?
Yeah, I feel this probably with the British jumps racing, they feel that they're more likely maybe to struggle over here, and it's not in Nicky Henderson's kind of manual to bring horse over if it isn't really Punchestown. I'm not really sure of any, like, because the attraction of coming over here for our prize money isn't what it was, certainly not. And with the jumpers, maybe there's an idea that it's very hard to be Willie Mullins and Gordon Elliott and all that, but I do feel a lot of it is down to the race courses as well. Like Pat Kyo was a big believer in Leopardstown and getting that big Japanese runner over and all of that stuff. And maybe it hasn't been, Ashen Emperor isn't quite the superstar like the Deep Impact run like that. It hasn't necessarily translated over here, but that sort of stuff is very important, I feel. And I feel flat racing is just underappreciated in this country. Like for me, when Christophe Soumillon was confirmed, I thought that was a massive marketing opportunity for the Irish Champions festival organisers, that they should have his face on billboards, Soumillon is coming and stuff like that. And maybe people don't know who Soumillon is, but it would get people talking because he's such a flamboyant rider and he made such a difference to the weekend. As why British jumps runners don't come over here enough. I'd say they think that they have enough prizes over there without Irish runners, but I'm kind of speculating.
Yeah, of course, you talk about Willie Mullins, the domination of that. Aidan O'Brien dominates the flat almost as much, so you'd wonder why they would want to go into his backyard to take him on. Anyway, let's get into the racing itself. Saturday, we the one you mentioned there, the 4-runner juvenile stakes, Emma. Biavento Cellini goes and wins that impressively. Then we also had Fallen Angel in the Matron Stakes, and of course Delacroix in the big one. And Christophe Soumillon rode a treble, didn't he, on Saturday? What about Saturday? What did you make of that? You were there in the flesh, so you saw it all.
Yeah, I felt, no, I don't think maybe he mightn't have been feeling the same, but it kind of felt like there might have been a high enough pressure day, I suppose, for Christophe Soumillon, because he had gotten the kind of job, I suppose, in interim while Ryan Moore was away, and he was 0 from 9 on his Ballydoyle rides coming into the weekend. So, with some high profile rides on Saturday, it was he kind of had to break that duct. And I thought the first win on the day, Diamond Necklace, was just brilliant. I heard Christophe being interviewed afterwards, and he was saying, she got a bit unsettled in the stalls and kind of resulted in him being a bit further back than he ideally would have liked to be. But he kind of just showed his experience, didn't rush her, and got there very impressively. She by St. Mark's Basilica, which, maybe they were a bit slower to get started than some other first season sire 2-year-olds, but they're really starting to get going now. And he looks like he could be definitely a sire who's on the up for Coolmore. I'd say they'll be good 3-year-olds, judging by how they're progressing and kind of towards the back end of their 2-year-old career. But going on, Bienvento Cellini was very good as well, I suppose. But a full brother Giselle, I think he's by Frank out of the newspaper of record. He was good, maybe not look the most exciting record visually, a 4-runner race, but you can't fault the performance from him either. But I thought Delacroix definitely stole the show. It was, maybe a bit deflating earlier in the week hearing Ombudsman wasn't coming into it, but I don't think if Ombudsman showed up, I'm not sure would he have beaten Delacroix on the day. I thought it was a career best from him. From what he's done so far, and anyone who might have been maybe doubting Christophe Soumillon, coming into the weekend. Look, I think just that decision that he made, turning the home bend, obviously he had the horse to do it, but he made a massive move turning the home bend. He went early, and Matt tried to follow him, but just didn't have the pace to go through that gap the same way he did. And it was just an accelerating turn of foot. It was really exciting watching it, to be honest. And I think, he's kind of proven, maybe people might have had doubts, was he a proper kind of top, like, superstar level horse, but I thought that performance there kind of solidified that for me. Whether or not he'll meet Ombudsman again this year, I'd imagine, will we see Delacroix next year? I think they were kind of coy enough in the interviews afterwards, but I'd like to see one more rematch. It's kind of the trilogy now at this stage, and I think Delacroix massively. Look, I was a fan of the horse before the weekend, but he massively went up in my estimations after that performance. I thought it was huge.
Yeah. What about you, Johnny? Do you think Ombudsman would have beaten him if he turned up?
Yeah, well, John Gosden was running scared of all the Ballydoyle horses, so it didn't happen. And it was funny watching the race. I don't remember the Champion Stakes where, like, I don't know, they obviously had a slightly different kind of arrangement of the track to other years, but like the horse coming up the stand side is unusual to me in the sense of where Delacroix ended up. And again, the drone footage they showed of the race where he made that move on the Sumion, I've been on about this for a while, but I think we need to have way more drone footage in racing. It offers a totally different perspective of what's happening, and it's so illuminating. But that turn of foot, and I suppose that's what separates really good horses from good horses, and he's out of Teppen by Dubawi, so he's going to be, and Aidan O'Brien's already, I think he was at the launch, kind of the yard visit recently. He was on about how much he's going to be an attractive stallion, Delacroix, but being, the first son of Dubawi, that's off the top of my head anyway, that they're going to Coolmore, one of the first sons. I don't think they have any Dubawi breds at stud in Coolmore at the moment, and but the pedigree he has, so he's going to go. And obviously there was that kind of coolness between Godolphin and Coolmore for so long, and it was kind of madness really when you think about the horses that they were missing out on long term. And he's going to have the choice of some very good mares now, Delacroix, because of his own pedigree, and he can match with all those Galileo bred mares. But yeah, it was a very, very good performance. I was a bit disappointed in White Birch. I was confident he'd run a bigger race than he did. He was weak in the market. There were some horses that were weak in the market over the weekend that really did kind of run according to that, but I thought it was a good renewal of the race. You had White Birch in it, Shin Emperor, you had the runner-ups, a proper solid horse that level, and it was a really excellent performance from Delacroix. And I suppose it's funny, I was just thinking of this, like, you get excited by these sires, but then they're sires to produce race horses that only run until they're 3 years of age, and that's the end of Delacroix as in this season. So I suppose that's the nature of the flat game. But it was a very good performance from Delacroix.
Yeah, be disappointing if we don't get to see him again. But as you say, it's the nature of what happens with flat racing and going to stud. There's so much money involved. One other thing just to note there was I see that the stewards held an inquiry after Delacroix won about the fact the horse jinked away from a photographer near the winning post. What's interesting here is that's the second time we've had that problem in Irish racing in recent weeks. We had Whirl when it won at the Curragh at the end of June as well, also jinked away from a photographer, and there was an inquiry into that as well. This is something that's a bit of a worry, is it?
Yeah, it's unusual. I can't really remember it happening too much in the past. World was obviously, I didn't really take a whole pile of notice of Delacroix jinking now, but World was maybe a bit more obvious. It happened a good bit out from the finish line. But look, I don't know, is it just these high profile weekends? You've obviously got a lot more media on track, maybe, people who mightn't be used to the layouts of the tracks and maybe standing in the wrong places. But luckily enough, no real damage done anyway in the end. But yeah, I'd imagine that's just it. Maybe people who wouldn't be used to going to the Curragh or Leopardstown and not quite sure about the layout and just end up in the wrong spot at the wrong time, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. Look, fortunately, we're minor incidents, and I'm sure that they'll get them sorted as we go forward. Moving on to the Curragh. Gosh, it was a cracking day, to be honest with you. Some great performances, I thought. Precise in the Moigler. I thought, for me, that was the race of the weekend. I absolutely loved it. I've watched it back about 20 times already. Can see all sorts of things in it, and I think there's loads of winners to come out of that. What about you, Johnny? What caught your eye on Sunday? Cracking racing.
Yeah, a bit like Lake Victoria last year. I mean, I was talking to Derek Healy, who many of you will know from the betting ring. We were just talking about the betting ring coming back from Ballinrobe. He gave me a lift home the other night, and it's across the all of the betting ring participants now, there's really great value for the customer. And I remember last year going racing, you could get some great value. Like Lake Victoria was friendless in this race, and as much as you the short price favourite here, again, like there were definite kind of horses you could take her on with, in the shape of, I suppose, the first two to name but two. I actually went to, since I've started cycling in recent years, and the wind is like, I'm looking up the wind now every day when I never looked it up. And it's something in racing that I've been interested in as the years have gone on, like how headwinds can affect horses. And it was interesting after the first winner, the first winner that Pat Foley trained, after the interviews afterwards, Luke McTeer was on about the headwind. And I'd actually gone to the trouble, because I knew it was a very windy weekend. I got into trouble at looking at the alignment of the Curragh on Google Maps, and the way that I thought it was going to be a southerly wind. So my impression of it looking at on Saturday was that it would be a crosswind. By all accounts, there was a bit of a headwind. So with that in mind, maybe it wasn't a race, maybe it wasn't a meeting where making the running was as favorable as before. Because if you're on a bicycle basically and you're behind somebody on a bicycle, it's literally way easier. Like the person in front is doing all the donkey work. So I can never get my head around how horses in front are actually advantaged rather than disadvantaged, because the horse in behind, in my view, should be able to get cover. But maybe horses are just too strong and it doesn't matter. But on days like yesterday, it seemed like there was a strong headwind, and maybe that didn't suit Composing, because I thought it was a flat run. She couldn't beat. I fancied her to beat Venetian Sun, but she couldn't be Precise or Beautify. And it was an interesting weekend for Ronan Whelan, because obviously he had a great ride that he then lost to no fault whatsoever of his own on Saturday. I was talking to him at the launch of the Champions weekend in Dublin recently, and he was kind of, it's been a season of kind of ups and downs from with just injuries and all that, but he was hoping that something might click, and this really clicked for him on Precise. As you say, Vinny, it was a cracking race to watch, because Composing made the running, and then like you're thinking Beautify is travelling the best, but then you're looking at Precise coming in exact same price I think as Lake Victoria last year in the race, and it was a brilliant renewal of the Moyglare. I tend to agree with you. I thought that was kind of the most exciting race of the day, but I thought El Rifa was brilliant as well. Like he was the one horse. There were a lot of market moves that were kind of a bit surprising at the weekend. I tipped up Saba Desert in the National Stakes. He was desperately disappointing, fairly weak in the market. Maybe there's more to come there from him, because I was kind of keen to take on Gastad, but I didn't think Al Rifa would go off 3-1, because the big thing about the Curry yesterday was the ground was faster than it was supposed to be, and Al Rifa, who'd shown that turn of foot the last day. Dermot Well always talks about stayers with speed, but he looks like, considering his 2-year-old form, he looks like a proper stayer with real speed. I thought he was brilliant in the Ledger. So they were the two kind of highlight races for me.
Yeah, I'd agree. I thought Al Rifa was awesome, and I think it's a Melbourne Cup contender in a big way now. 7-1, I think. I'm into favourite for the Melbourne Cup. What about yourself, Emma? What about Xantheri beating Gistad in the National Stakes?
Yeah, that was, I suppose, really heartwarming to see. I think the interviews afterward with Eve Johnson-Houghton were brilliant. And how well has she done this year? From what I'd imagine, a relatively small team, I suppose, in comparison to some of her competitors on the day of 2-year-olds. I think Xantheri cost 35,000 as a yearling, and to go on and win a Group 1. Her Wild Ascot winner cost 9,000, so she's obviously got a serious eye for a horse, and she was beaming with pride, I suppose, afterwards in our interview. It was a big performance. I thought he would have been very, very hard to beat on the day, but this horse has improved from start to start, and I think she said that they'll be dreaming throughout the winter about him, and you can see why he looks a horse with massive potential going forward into next year. And it's nice to see as well that variety among the Group 1 winners. I was really impressed with El Rifa as well, though, to be honest. I thought just the ride he got from Dylan Brown McMonigal, look, they went plenty fast, I'd say, but he just sat motionless and weaved his way through the field as if defeat was never out of the question, I suppose, and kicked away from him. He looks like he could be fairly hard to stop in a Melbourne Cup now. He'll probably have plenty of weight after that performance, but maybe if the Ledger wind or Scandinavia goes down there, it might help him out a bit in that regard. He was obviously bought by Australians, I think, a couple of weeks before the race, Australian Bloodstock. They were actually in the car as well. It was interesting to see their interviews. I think they were saying they've won 4 Melbourne Cups now between themselves and Joseph. Joseph has 2 and they've won 2. So they're a fair force to be reckoned right now going down under, I'd say. And it'll be exciting kind of seeing the build up for that for him. But kind of like you, I was really impressed by the Moyglare stud. I'd say the first 4 fillies home there could be fairly top class. I thought Venetian Sun didn't have a whole pile of luck for Carol Burke. He was obviously, there was plenty of really positive media about her, I suppose, in the build up to it. She was brilliant in France last time, and she was stepping up in trip. All of her runs so far had been over 6 furlongs, and I think they were saying it was going to be kind of a tester to see would she be a Guineas filly for next year or would she be a sprinter. But I'd say they'd probably take plenty of encouragement from it. She didn't have a whole pile of luck throughout the race, but I thought stayed it out very strongly. And you'd imagine, I think the entries for the Guineas are next week, and she'll definitely be put in there. I'd say after that performance, she was a big eye catcher. But I thought the winner Precise was brilliant as well. I actually saw her winning her maiden down in Cork a few weeks ago. She's a filly with a bit of fire in her belly. I'd say she was giving Jack Cleary a bit of a hard time going out of the parade ring that day, but she's obviously really talented, and I think actually bred by the O'Brien family as well. So I'd say her trainer got a fair kick out of that as well.
Just have to mention, Vinny, as well, the team, the Ammo team and Adrian Murray and Robson Aguirre for that result in our only one Group 1 sprint of the year. And I didn't know an awful lot about Arizona Blaze. I was just reading the Racing Post this morning, some of the pedigree analysis the weekend. Like Arizona Blaze by Sergei Prokofiev, who would have been a fairly low-key, fairly unproven stallion. And the dam Liberisk was she won one race from 11 starts, rated 48. And so that pedigree is, there isn't like she wasn't quite badly bred, but basically it's not a pedigree. That's the sort of horse could go for next to nothing. But Robson forked out 82 grand for that Arizona Blaze as a yearling, and so clearly he definitely, this guy knows what he's doing. Like, he liked something about the horse, the physique of it, the way he walks, something about him anyway. And now he's a potential sire. He's basically a Group 1 sprint winner. He's done enough to go to stud. And in terms of all the bananas money that Ammo are spending, they now have, they have their own homebred sires and all of that. And Arizona Blaze is going to be interesting going forward. But Adrian Murray and the team, this was a brilliant weekend. The one and the first and the third in that race was incredible going, really. And I have to give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, that was you as well, I thought. And I was in York when he ran in the Nunthorpe, and I thought he was the pick of the ring that day, and there seemed to be a lot of confidence around him as well. He was disappointing on the day, but kind of echoing what Johnny said, like, fair play to them for turning him around and getting him back so quick to go out and win his Group 1. I thought the interviews afterwards were quite good as well. I think David Egan said the horse thought he had won the Commonwealth Cup at Ascot. So he's finally a group winner for Ammo, and it's important, I suppose, to see Ammo getting big winners like that, considering the money he's investing. You like to see them getting good return, and like Johnny said, he could be an exciting stallion prospect. Now, I don't know, will they keep him going next year? I'd say they kind of left it open. It sounded as if he might go to America next as well, so that was a good one of the days.
Yeah, interesting that with Ammo spending fortunes on some other horses and the same with all the big guns, Godolphin and Coolmore and everything else. But yet the little ones can still slip in at small money, as you talk about. Zanteri costing 35,000. What a performance that is! And then you'd one I saw on Saturday, the last race in Leopardstown, Pinka Oxalis of Stephen Torrance, only cost $5,500. Has won over 100,000 now. So there's still little bargains to be found out there if you look hard enough. Anyway, one other thing to look at was the St. Leger in Doncaster on Saturday with Scandinavia. Your Karmers was in that from Paddy Toomey's. Didn't quite perform to the level you might have expected. And of course, Lambourne in it too. What did you make of that, Emma?
Yeah, look, I thought coming into the race, Scandinavia, obviously Karmers had beaten him in Ascot and the Queen's Vase, but look, Scandinavia has I think improved every start so far. He's obviously had the cheek pieces fitted since, and look, maybe it might be a bit early to say it, but he looks kind of maybe a successor to Kyprios, who we saw parading at the Curragh yesterday actually. He's been entered in the Melbourne Cup as well. Whether or not now they'll go down there will be interesting, considering the ordeal they had last year, but entries out last week, and he was put in there, and you imagine it could be an interesting target for him. But look, I think Scandinavia is just a really top class there. Like I thought the way that he won the Goodwood Cup last time, against all the horses over that trip, he just looks maybe quite an exceptional staying 3-year-old, and could be one, we can kind of build an affiliation to those staying horses because they tend to stay in training for a bit longer, and he looks like one who will be there for years to come, I'd say.
And just one last question for you around the weekend. Billy Lee took a bad looking tumble yesterday. He's okay, I presume, is he? Because he's only just back from injury.
He is, yeah, he is. Thank God. Yeah, not much you'd like to see, I suppose, just after him coming back from his broken collarbone. But yeah, all good, thankfully.
Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, that's a lot of people falling on the flat lately, in the UK mainly. But it's always a worry on the flat, isn't it? Just going so much quicker. Anyway, one other thing to talk about here is in the UK last week we had this Hillsin case into race fixing, basically. Which was aired during the week. Some crazy stuff coming out of that. The jockey Dylan Kitts talking about, what was he saying? Under no circumstances was he to effing win, was what he was told by an associate of the owner when he rode the horse that day. Johnny, we then have the police in the UK also went and arrested some man during the week into race fixing again, a separate case altogether. So there's a lot of this in the UK. We've seen it down the years. There's been any amount of cases in the UK, rarely ever in Ireland for some reason. What do you make of that?
Yeah, it's a fair point. Like, you don't need to listen to this podcast to know that skullduggery does take place in Ireland, and there are lots of cases over the years that are still spoken about. It's very, very hard to bring criminal proceedings against people at times, but dodgy stuff has gone on in Ireland, and this has been really riveting to listen to some of the stuff that's coming out of the inquiry. And like, racing is, as I said before, racing is so much built on like handicapping your horses, and basically there's so much deception built in racing that I do struggle with that at times. Like, I'm a big believer in the judicial system, that people who, if you commit a crime and you at least own up to it, I think you should be looked at a bit more favourably. And you see cases where people lie through their teeth and they don't get punished at all for that. And for me, the crime is only the start of the crime in some respects. So in racing, you get a lot of this sort of nonsense spoken to the officials when people are brought in and so on and so forth. But the stuff that was coming out of this, even like the jockey getting a tattoo of the horse's name on his legs or something afterwards to put it behind him, is really, really mad stuff. But ultimately, like, it's actually quite sad to hear the pressure that he allegedly was under that day, the jockey. That and if you watch the race, you're maybe not surprised by it, because it was an extraordinarily visual car crash for the rider afterwards. It was like, this is not good at all. But I don't, in Ireland, I still, there are so many cases that you look at and you say, you look at it afterwards and you say, did we see justice there? Did we see, I like in racing, I like good people to be rewarded. I like people who campaign their horses honestly and who are good to deal with and are generally good people. I like them to be rewarded. And on the other side, people who've been involved in all sorts of skullduggery in racing, they probably don't really get punished enough in this country. And it's hard to prove it, but I never have any faith in an investigation that will find the truth.
No, I agree. It seems to go on forever and ever, and then nothing at the end is what we get most of the times. Even in the most detailed investigations, they still find no one at the end of it. It really is very frustrating. Anyway, see what happens in the UK. It'll all unfold as we go forward. Right, we'll finish off with a horse to follow from the weekend, I presume it's going to be. For me, I'm going to go for the one that finished second in the Moyglare. Beautify. I thought travelled fantastic. I think she wants a bit of better ground. That's what I think myself. I think it was just when she got let down on the softish ground that she didn't quite pick up as she might have done and didn't match precise in the closing stages. But I still think it was a fantastic run. I think all the way through that race, even back as far as the fifth, is still a maiden, Willie McCreary's filly that ran that. So she's one to definitely watch out for again. She travelled well for most of it too. It's only in the last furlong she petered out a little bit. So she'll definitely win our maiden as well. Anyway, Emma, what did you catch your eye most of all?
Look, I gave her a mention already. Obviously, we've mentioned a few other kind of group winners, but I thought Diamond Necklace, she won the Ingabel, the opening race of Champions Weekend. I just thought she was brilliant. She won a winner's race on her first start for Aiden, which was, I suppose, noteworthy enough that she went for a winner's race rather than a maiden. But look, she was very, very good. She had plenty to do, but she flew home. I'd say she's a filly. Maybe wouldn't have been as forward as the fillies we saw in the Moyglare on the Sunday, but one who seems to be definitely coming into herself now. She's got a few big entries for the rest of the year. Where she go next will be interesting, but I'd say she's one you can follow down the line into next year as well. She's a filly, I'd say, with plenty of ability.
Excellent. And Johnny, what about yourself?
I'm having one of those Dougal, those women were in the nip moments where, sorry, I was just looking at, I was looking at some of the, I hadn't checked like all of the, Glen Eagle Bay was sent off 7-4 in the Sovereign Pats. I was basically working on the radio just as this race was taking place, and I tipped Tribal Nation, and I stopped off around the South Circular Road to watch the race. I was very happy with the way Tribal Nation. Glen Eagle Bay was sent off 7-4. Like, is that not absolute madness? Like some of the market moves. I mean, and what about Vinny? You like your market moves. If you watch the big at the Curry yesterday, it was hard to call how the betting would go in the super auction sales race. So Alperslan, right, first time out, was sent off 14-1 in a 6-runner race at Leicester. 14-1 on the 10th of August. Albeit there was an odds-on shot in the race, but 14-1, despite the fact he's trained by Carl Burke. He then comes to a 16-runner sales race with a load of unknown quantities in it. The second and the third are rated 90 and 88. He's taken on 15 horses, and people are backing him into 5-4 at the off. Like, you at times, markets just I can't make head nor tail of them, and that's a long story short, or a short story long. I'm going to tip a horse who was friendless in the betting. Didn't seem to be fancied in Ballinrobe on Friday, called How You Loving. I was talking to the connections afterwards. The Monroe brothers, Loving it'd be very much a Galway thing, and apparently it's a particular thing you say in the Claddagh in Galway. How You Loving, and the two lads are proper Galway lads. But How You Loving was running a 12-runner handicap chase, no money for her whatsoever. She was sent off 12-1 under John Shinnick, who absolutely bolted up. It just looked like a strongly run 2 miles. It was right up her street. Very strong Yates filly. She was really reminding me of her dad a bit in the parading afterwards. She was very hard to keep a handle on. It was only her 7th career start for Ross O'Sullivan, and I'd love to see her in Galway before the year is out. I thought she was brilliant in that chase. It was a strongly run race, and Mormon Gorey, who was a very solid yardstick, she beat her more or less pushed out by 6 lengths. And didn't seem to be fancied on her first run since November of last year. So markets are just incredible at times. I didn't see anything like that Glen Eagle Bay in a long time, though.
Yeah, and by Yates and winning over 2 miles over fences, that'll stay further, no doubt. Yeah, one to watch out for. Anyway, if you are having a bet, do gamble responsibly. Make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back again next week for more of the same. Of course, we've got Listowel coming up soon as well, so lots to look forward to in the next few weeks. All right, thanks for watching. Bye for now.